Hi Kaylee, you and your boyfriend have some beautiful cats, and I totally understand why you'd want to get out and photograph or just bask, in the cat's cases. Including, a bright sunny day with some great shadows, I think is nice. The shadow detail adds some nice information. Overall, I think your images are well exposed. One thing that did have a difficulty with, though, was that your number four your number two image was corrupt. I just couldn't download it. Given that the minimum for the assignment was 4 images and you're able to I was able to open 4 of those, that's fine for your assignment, so you don't have to resubmit it. However, if you want to, certainly for some advice, I'm happy to look at it. You said you edited your images in the program that came on your Windows computer, and in many of them you added a little bit of warmth. The difficulty with this is that unless you specifically calibrate your monitor, it's likely that it's going to be showing you incorrect data. And so what I see here on my calibrated monitor is that it's a little bit orange. And I know you wanted to bring that out. However, instead of going to add warm tones to an image, oftentimes you're better off increasing the saturation just a little bit, or if you have the opportunity in the program you're using, the vibrance. That's a better way to increase the colors that you want to without making everything look just a little bit off. Love the shadow detail here. I think it's a nice, well relaxed pose for your kitty anyways, but the shadow here I think is really what makes this part of the image strong. Top part of the image here with the snow, I'm not sure that really adds a lot, and I'd probably suggest just giving it a little bit of a crop. I'd probably go with something just like this. Make it really all about the kitty basking in the sun. This particular image here, showing your boyfriend petting your cat, I think that's a good human interaction with the cat. Definitely makes sense to include it. One of the things that I'd like to encourage you to do is really consider everything that you have in the frame. So this is a photograph, obviously, about these two. Yeah, you have things in here like, I don't know, I'm guessing this is a garden clipper or something like that. You have some sort of pole here. These things aren't really adding to the image and are, in fact, detracting a little bit. You also want to be careful about where you are cropping the body. So in this case, we've got a couple of toes sticking out, which are just they're just distractions. So again, I'd say crop this guy. Obviously, we know that he has a second foot, but just including a couple of toes isn't really the way you want to do that. Coming in, maybe something more along this. It minimizes the things that are in the background. It minimizes the distractions, and it definitely helps overall make the image a bit stronger. Again, I think that there's a bit of a color cast here, and one of the ways that I would probably get rid of that is the camera raw filter. And if I clicked on this white balance tool and clicked on something that ought to be white, then you can usually get pretty close. Now this is unfortunately giving me a little bit of a magenta cast, and what you can do here is, if this isn't just exactly right, you can tweak this until it looks pretty normal. As I mentioned before, adding some vibrance or saturation is a good way to make the colors pop that you want. And sorry, you're getting a little bit of artifacting here from the computer acting up while I'm recording the video, but you can kind of see the before and the after here. And if you look at that compared to the very end, you can see how just those couple of little tweaks make it a stronger image. This one here, I would say, this water here, not so much. Again, I like the shadow here and I like what you did with that. This shadow here isn't really adding, and it is to the point where you wonder what's going on here. So again, I'd say just kind of crop down a little bit, probably somewhere in there. We still have a little bit here, so we could even get rid of that if we wanted to. I'll show you how the patch tool works. Just kind of click and drag it over, and it's as simple as that to get rid of the distraction. We could get rid of this little damp spot in the corner too, just to give it some nice balance. We are starting to see a little bit of a hot spot here where the image was a little bit blown out. It's tough when you have cats or other animals that have real high contrast with dark colored fur and light colored fur to get everything well exposed. We see a little hot spot here, and we see a little bit of loss of detail here in the face and the shadows. We might be able to bring that up just a little bit, and one way we might do that is to copy that part of it. We'll copy that to a second layer, and that's just Control or Command J, and then change it to screen mode. And then we can work to feather that in a little bit. So we add a layer mask, and then we can use the brush tool. Painting with black and with a relatively low opacity brush, we can start to feather that in until we get a pretty good seamless sort of edit. Now again, the goal here is to bring detail out in the face, because obviously the face for any animal is going to be a key part of that image. And it's kind of quick and dirty, and of course the more time you spend with something like this, the better the edit's going to be. But this kind of shows you the before and the after, and so we can start to see the eyes and the nose and all that. It makes a big difference. Finally, this one here, we've got some nice lens flare. I think it adds a little bit of mood to the image. I like that they're looking at each other. Definitely adds a nice bit of visual interest to the scene itself. Here with the shadows, I think that's fine. Here we have obvious context clues as to why we would have these shadows, and so it's not nearly the same thing as we had in this earlier image. That said, the background is not really super important, so what we might do is adding a little bit of a blur. And if we something like this, where we keep the main subjects, of course, pretty sharp, but we can end up blurring the rest of the background a little bit, and it just adds a little bit of extra interest to the photo. Obviously your boyfriend's never going to be super sharp because of that lens flare, but we get good detail here in the kitty, and we blur some of this background. We'll just kind of show you the before and the after. These differences can be subtle, but sometimes those subtle changes are enough to really bring it to the next level. Let me know if you have any questions.